About 30 years ago, animator and lone American member of Monty Python's Flying Circus Terry Gilliam went from an auteur curiosity to a filmmaker of note almost overnight with his cult classic Brazil, a dark sci-fi comedy that was as famous for his one-of-a-kind visuals and endlessly inventive direction as it was for Gilliam's legendary battle with studio executives to get his preferred version of the film released to theaters with its brilliantly twisted true ending intact. Set in a dystopian future, Brazil was an absurd escapist satire of then-present-day corporate culture in which a daydreamer office drone falls into a rabbit hole of adventure, paranoia, and misunderstanding when he stumbled into a conspiracy unleashed by a flaw in the corporate machine in which he's always been a loyal cog. Gilliam has had his share of successes since then, but Zero Theorem represents the first time in 3 decades he's seen to be directly revisiting the themes and ideas of Brazil but in a new context. Intentionally or not, his tics and fetishes are so specific and his futurism so distinct that it's impossible to read the film as anything but a Brazil for the 21st century and for the digital age, presenting a new but familiar dystopia where so much of the human experience and interaction has been consigned to the web that no one seems to notice the physical world crumbling around them, and where put-upon code-crunching tech workers, programmers, and system managers have replaced anonymous accountants as the new image of tragic, interchangeable corporate servitude. One such programmer is Christoph Waltz as Cohen Leff, a depressed and disturbed master coder living as a shell of a man after having awoken from what we're told was a prior life of addiction and hedonism, whose main goal now is to finagle a disability waiver so he can do his coding from home, the better to wait for a phone call he expects to come at any moment, which he believes will tell him the purpose of his life. Speaking of programming, the film's visual centerpieces include one of the most depressingly plausible visions of what computers of the future might look like I've ever seen. Vertically oriented monstrosities where keyboards have been replaced by tablet controller hybrids, and all activities from coding to surfing to communicating have been gamified into nightmare crafts between Minecraft and slide puzzles. What sets the film apart from not only Brazil but most of Gilliam's other films is it's clear almost immediately that the actual plot is secondary to the moment-by-moment vignettes, an excuse to watch Waltz's decaying sad sack of a man shuffle through his failing world as a blunt caricature of our own. You know, in case the central presence of a zombie-like tech wizard sealing himself up in home in order to wait for someone else to hand him life direction was too subtle for you. In what's technically the story proper, Cohen is granted his dream of telecommuting from home on the condition that he undertake his company's most difficult code-cracking assignment, solving the so-called Zero Theorem, a theoretical math equation similar to the Big Crunch theory wherein 0 can be made to equal 100%, thus empirically proving that everything adds up to nothing and life, the universe, and existence itself are utterly meaningless. As he attempts to work out the problem, Cohen finds himself invaded by everyone from company thugs to middle managers to his employer's tech hotshot teenage son, some of whom claim to be able to help, but some of whom also imply that proving the Zero Theorem could have disastrous and sinister consequences in and of itself. He also encounters Melanie Thierry as a mysterious woman who offers him escape into virtual romantic fantasies that he begins to believe could be made real. Unfortunately, this character feels strangely retrograde and out of place in what's otherwise an exceptionally of-the-moment story. Trotting out the ancient geek fantasy cliché of the benevolent life coach, lover, savior girl brings to mind the most dated clichés of bad 90s cyberpunk rather than the mind-bending post-digital ruminations that inform the rest of the film, regardless of how compelling Thierry is from scene to scene. You also do start to notice how much budget constraints seemingly keep the action locked into a handful of admittedly impressive sets, with much of the film's scope noticeably described and suggested rather than shown, especially in the third act. Still, it's a treat to see the actors inhabiting Gilliam's trademark elaborate, detail-packed physical sets after the occasional green screen overuse that hampered Dr. Parnassus. The world feels small but lived in. I'm not sure Zero Theorem adds up to the omniscient last world on techie isolationism that it aims to be, but it's fascinating, and it's great to see another work from a filmmaker whose dogged refusal to stop plugging away at his own unsolvable puzzle has become an idiosyncratic heroism unto itself. The film has already run in various territories throughout the world and film festivals, and is currently playing on demand in the US before a limited theatrical release next week. I'd call it definitely worth checking out, if for no other reason than you won't see anything else like it anytime soon. See you next time!